So make sure that you are using the correct link if you want to watch me kind of ramble on and hopefully take your questions as well on this second live chat. It'd be really, really nice to see some questions from you guys. And just to introduce myself, and hopefully Chris will join me later on as well. Just to introduce myself, my name is Kerstin. And you might know me because I have been preparing this event together with Chris Broholm. I am in a little podcast called the Creative Language Learning Podcast, and I also have a blog, which is fluentlanguage.co.uk/blog. And I started blogging about languages in 2012 because I started my little self-employed business as a language tutor, and being a language tutor has really surprised me. It's kind of been a fascinating time, but what surprised me more was actually language blogging, because when you first start out writing a blog, you are really scared that at some point you're going to run out of topics. And when you do run out of topics, it's terrifying. You sort of think, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was really surprised because I just never ran out. So that was that, really. And that's kind of where it went. So really, my first recommendation, my first thing that I wanted to talk about is where you go from writing a book. And it's like Benny Lewis was saying, which you've all enjoyed and has probably stolen my thunder, so I'm just rambling here. It's true, it's very true that writing your first book, especially when you've been blogging beforehand, is an entirely different undertaking, and it's kind of difficult because you have to sit down and you have to write this sort of long piece that all hangs together, and it's an entirely different style to what you've been used to by just writing sort of a blog article, which might be 800 words or 1,000 words, and that's really enough. That's sort of the size that people consume on the internet. So it's a very different undertaking, and the second book that I wrote is really the one that I wanted to talk about today and kind of offer to you people. It's called the Vocab Cookbook, and that was really a reaction to so many people telling me that they are scared of learning a language because they don't want to forget words, or they'll just, oh, I'm so forgetful anyway, you know, I forget this and this and that, I can't remember anything, so, you know, who am I to learn a language, was essentially the logic there. And I kind of felt like, well, I've never had this problem. In all the languages I've learned English, French, Spanish, Italian, Latin, that's sort of the majority of my languages. And I never really had this issue where I just completely forgot words. And I started wondering why that is, and whether I have like a specific technique or a way that I do this that is just different to how other people learn languages. And as it turns out, I don't. But I think what I have is, what I've always had is this level of organization, this kind of order in learning vocabulary. And that's what I try to put across to people, in combination with actually reading a lot of the research and trying to make it more accessible, the idea of language learning through your vocabulary. Vocabulary is really, really important. You can't really use a language without words. It's all about words. It's all about expressions. And I think it's a huge factor that makes a big, big difference when you think about getting really organized in your vocabulary learning. Getting organized, knowing, and the way I've structured this book is you've got section 1, which is all about acquiring. You've got section 2, which is about really memorizing. So first, even look at what kind of vocab you need and where it comes from. Secondly, think about memorizing, get a system into place. And there are various ideas of mnemonics, and Anthony Metivier, who will be here in book club later today, wrote a special chapter for me all about memory palaces, which goes really far, and it's this like mega detailed way of, you know, memorizing words and really building this sort of virtual room in your head where you're walking around and kind of really like, okay, you use your natural environment in order to relate to places, which is very, very interesting. But at the same time, it's like, whoa, it's a lot of work. And if you've never, you know, if you thought you just look at words and just remember them, then the idea of the memory palace is just bonkers. You know, it just kind of drives you crazy. And then the final bit that I wanted to look at was what I call reviewing. So you know, I think there are 3 steps to really knowing words, and they are: you acquire them, you memorize them, and then you review them. And the review, that's where this kind of very famous idea of the spatial repetition, not recognition, spatial repetition comes in, which is all about making sure that you encounter your words on a regular basis, making sure that those words, you know, don't get forgotten because you keep kind of bumping back into them. And it's very different to the idea of just acquiring a word and then being done. And that is not how language learning works. That's not how vocabulary learning works. So that is essentially what the Vocab Cookbook is about. It also contains some really good ideas on how you can memorize rules and grammar and things like that. And overall, I think, like Benny was saying, none of us can give you this sort of method to just make things work, for things to just kind of magically work. But what we can do is we can say, okay, here's a way to get organized about this, and here's a way to make this reasonably easy for you. Okay, just because I'm on my own here, I'm just going to double check on Facebook, make sure I'm not missing any questions. So you're going to have to watch me clicking around a little bit. It's been really, really interesting having Benny Lewis on. I really liked hearing, particularly hearing from Benny about his perspective, because this is somebody who's been blogging for 10 years. So someone who's been doing language blogging for a long, long time, and has really built up this very dominant and very viral name in language blogging. And it's been really interesting to hear a perspective on how to become somebody who is in kind of, to put it bluntly, respected by media. You know, like people think you know something, even though you haven't been like this huge book writer, or you haven't done anything, you know, you haven't sort of been on a TV show about it yet. And it's, you know, people go, oh my God, you've written a book. And that's not really, I think, what anybody wants who really writes a book. I think when people write books, it's because we care about what we're saying so much, and we want to give you the kind of structure of things so much that we want to, you know, we want to help people out. And you kind of put your mind to doing this thing. And the Vocab Cookbook, I would say, was also a 3-month project. I had a writing period. The editing period, if you've never written a book before, is huge. It's just completely, everything changed for me. And I did my first edit by myself, which is just painful, because it's like you've got to kill your own words off and go, that doesn't make sense, I'm moving this around, I'm changing this around. But it's helpful to have an external editor, because you really need some distance to what you're doing. So I'm hoping that by giving away the Vocab Cookbook for free today, you guys really enjoy what I'm putting out there. And I also want to encourage you and ask you to participate a little bit further. So if you've downloaded the Vocab Cookbook onto your Kindle, which is a great vocabulary 101 guide, and I think you can just, you know, you can learn a lot from it, hopefully, or you can just kind of check whether your system aligns with mine, and that would be really cool to even just hear feedback of, you know, whether all I'm putting together works for you guys. So if the Vocab Cookbook is already on your Kindle and you've read it, I would strongly ask you guys to post a review of it on Amazon. And if you do review it over the next month. So if you post a review of this in February, and obviously February starts on Sunday, I'm giving away to everybody a T-shirt, and every single person who reviews the book will get the additional bonus worksheets which I wrote for this book, and they have been tried and tested, and they really, really help you just make sense of what you're really working on, and make sense of all these rules, and they take it out of the abstract. You know, I'm a teacher. I want you guys to not just read about stuff, but actually do it. So these worksheets will really help you apply all the stuff that you're reading about, instead of just going, oh yeah, interesting, yeah, SoundCloud, whatever, and then just not doing it. So I want you to actually do it. And in terms of the T-shirt, as modeled by me today, this is the T-shirt, not this very T-shirt, that you can win. I'm just going to show you. I will select my favorite review of the book, and honestly, if it's a 1-star review, you can still be in to win this T-shirt. So it's not about the person who praises me the most, but I want to have quality reviews. I really want to know what you think about this and whether my system works out with yours. So I'm giving away this T-shirt, which is from the Language Show live at the Olympia, and I think it's so cute. This is a generic, you know, looks great on women, looks great on men. It's a size medium, and it says on it in English, in Spanish, in what I presume is Chinese, in Italian, German, French, and is this Portuguese? Ew. I love languages, which we all do. So, you know, please do get involved, post your review, and all you need to do to make me aware of the review that you have posted is to come and email me either at Kerstin, Kerstin, at fluentlanguage.co.uk, or post here on the event and just let me know. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you think about my books, and I can't wait to give out all these worksheets, because they really are, they have been very, very popular. So worksheets, T-shirts, everything. Chris, my co-host, is asking me a question. Hang on a minute, if I just take a second to invite him to this workout, you do not want to see me work out, to this hangout. Maybe he can come back and actually chat to me. That would be great. But he says, did you learn anything about your own learner profile in the process of writing your books? So my own learner profile, that's a really interesting question, especially because when I wrote Fluency Made Achievable, which was the first book I wrote, I tried to put together this very simple little quiz that you can kind of give yourself, or test that you can take by yourself, which is all about putting together your own core skills profile. So it's really a question of, okay, can you do this to do with speaking? Can you do this to do with listening? Can you do this in terms of the core skill writing? And this in the core skill listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So reading. And I learned something very interesting about myself, which is the amount of discipline that I need, and the amount of that I am. Two things really. I'm quite rule bound in the sense that I like to be organized and have a system. The second thing I learned about my learner profile, which is actually probably the most significant thing, is that I'm really old-fashioned. This might sound crazy, but the way that I have been taught to learn languages in school really, really works for me. And I'm not an online flashcard user, really. I'm not, I really don't do Duolingo, I don't get it. And I'm going to publish a blog article about this, kind of ranting and raving very soon. But I found that I'm really old-fashioned and it really works for me. So let me just show you, excuse me, I have to move the camera, how I've been reviewing my French vocabulary, and that is by purchasing a little notebook. You can get really, really cool pre-printed notebooks and decide what goes in them from the company Bound, and that is boundforanything.com. So they do these really cute notebooks, which are they're very well priced if you are in the US. If you have to pay for postage abroad, it's a little bit more difficult. Okay, so essentially, this is how I learned vocab, which is how I learned vocab in school. I will write down, the English, or this is strange as well, and I'll write down the French, and that's how I review French vocabulary. And this is very different. I don't do flashcards. I do write, look, cover, repeat. So I run through the lists like this if I want to revise my vocabulary. I also noticed about my own learner profile that I do similar things to what Chris, you discussed in your recent podcast with Gabriel Weiner, which is to create this very rich vocabulary unit in a way, and the vocabulary unit being a thing that is more than just learning a word, but you learn the word, you try to remember where you learned the word from, you write down things that you connect with it, you might associate this with pictures, you say it out loud a few times. So I have a very multi-sensual way of remembering a word, and I try to remember even a silly situation or word around it. And that's been really, really helpful for me in a way. So that's something. And then maybe the final thing that I learned about myself is that, and not just in the process of writing my books, but generally, there are a lot of people who are much better than me at listening and processing data and information. So I don't learn very well from Michelle Thomas CDs. I don't learn very well with podcasts, anything with listening, because I just get distracted and start doing other things. So again, this sort of old school physical aspect of writing, and I have researched this, and again in the Vocab Cookbook make reference to excuse my many ums, make reference to studies which have shown that if you take your notes by hand, you do retain stuff better. So me being old school in that sense is probably quite good. I'll just take a question from Catherine Wilcox. Do I have different strategies for picking up vocabulary for different languages? She says, for example, I have to adjust my approach a bit when I started learning Mandarin. I struggle more with word retention in some languages than others. And I'm wondering if part of the issue is my approach. Love the shirt. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Win a t-shirt, please do. Again, review my book on Amazon. Get in touch with me. Make me aware of your review. And I'm going to give away a t-shirt to my favorite review, which can be a really scathing, mean one, as long as it's thorough. I'm such a teacher. Okay. Different vocabulary for different languages. Yes, Catherine, I think there's something to that. I don't think the approach I don't think the problem is you necessarily. I think a lot of this has to do, and I find this especially when I'm learning, well, when I'm trying to review sort of my Italian, my Spanish, and also my Latin, because I do try to stay fresh with Latin, is that vocab divergence makes a big difference. So if you already know the word and can tie it to something that you know in your native language, for me, that is extremely useful. So my approach when learning a language which I know is a Romance language is try to tie it to something I already know. My approach to learning a language like Russian is much more the sort of memorize, create a new association type way. And I'm reminded of the Russian word grajdanstva, which I can't pronounce probably very well. And that is citizenship. And the mem for this in memrise.com is so cute. It's not even one that I created, but it works for me anyway. And it's new citizens perform a gracious dance, a gracious dance when they receive their citizenship. And it just, in my mind, it just builds this really rich image. And I'm reminded of the American citizenship ceremonies that you see on television where it's like a really big thing. And I sort of build up this picture of people having a little dance, and it's great. But this is very different to how I would learn that word, say, if it was new to me in English, citizenship, and then I'm thinking, oh yeah, city and Citibank, and you know, like you can imagine the citizens in the Citibank. It's different because it's more literal, so I connect more to the words that I already know, or I connect to them more linguistically, whereas in a language where there is less vocab divergence, in the sense of divergence means the words are more related. In a language like that, I have to work a little harder to build a picture. So I wouldn't say necessarily it's you. I don't think it's you, the approach. Okay, Talitha, thank you very much for downloading my book. And she says, my problem is usually the actual doing things. That's it, you're not alone, you're not alone. Most of what I've read is a little bit hard to action. I'm self-employed, so can't afford most of the master classes I've read about. It's anyway really glad to be hearing. Sorry, you typed Tom. I was like, who's Tom? But yeah, no, I'm glad to be sharing. I'm glad that, you know, I've got some people watching and asking these questions. That's really, really kind of you. So it is really, the actual doing things is difficult. And I don't necessarily, even though I'm a person who advocates learning through courses and who, you know, holds courses both on the marketing side for bloggers and online teachers on brand building, because I like that, but also obviously tries to instruct people in a language. I often find, and this is partly why I try to be very structured with my book, I often find that people underestimate how long things are going to take. And Talitha, you might relate to this as well. If you're reading a whole book all in one go, you may feel as though you have to action every single recommendation in this book. What is more realistic is to bear in mind that, number one, some of those actions, some of those ideas just aren't for you. They're just perhaps just not your way of processing information, in the same way that I just don't do listening to things in my car and learning from that very well. And the other aspect is really to kind of remember that every single new thing that you expose your brain to, every single new thing that you work with takes some time to get used to. Habit building, most people say that habit building takes 3 months to develop one new habit, and 3 months is quite long if you're still trying to develop something. So becoming habitual with really, really small things, I find extremely useful. And that is one thing to kind of go with. And the second bit is, this is really why I create worksheets and things like that, because I think you've got to, when you first hear of a new process, it's quite, a lot of the ideas sound sort of good, but they sound good for somebody else. And you have to make the conscious effort to put time aside and go, okay, now I'm literally just going to do this. And my advice to you, maybe if you've got the issues with the actual doing things and taking action on new methods, is don't try more than one at one time, and give it a go 2 or 3 times. You know, like really work through it a few times so that you can really work out if something is for you. What I find very interesting is I talk about it doesn't work when I study in my car. But what has worked really well for me is when I'm in my car with another learner, and because I'm such a language nerd, I'm kind of the person imposing the learning on my poor fiance. But we were driving to Wales last year, and I downloaded all these podcasts called the Learning Welsh podcast. And I'm just gonna make myself a note to find this podcast for you, because it was really cute. I would strongly recommend it if somebody wants to learn Welsh. And we're sort of driving along, and the guy, you know, demonstrates the words, and you're meant to say the words. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Hi. Hang on, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Just need to change my audio. So. Should be able to hear you through my headphones now. No, I can't.
Hello?
So as we were driving along, we sort of both said the words. So the person said "Bore da." This means, you know, hello, or this means good day or good morning, and "Prynhaun da." So this means good afternoon. "Nospit da" means good evening. And because we both said it, it was almost like having a little competition. Even though my partner isn't competitive, but I'm crazy competitive. And because I was kind of doing it with somebody else, it worked so much better for me. So it's, again, this kind of, my personality is very extroverted. When I do stuff with other people, I do it better. And that's certainly an aspect that works for me. So work in line with your personality. That may have been the longest answer you've ever heard. Hey, Chris.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I thought I'd give you a little bit of time to shine, you know, a little time in the spotlight.
Yes. We're having this like long monologue. I'm so glad that, you know, you guys are watching and enjoying the endless Kerstin monologue, and I'm glad that you gave me some questions to work with. That's really kind of you.
What question was the last one? Was that from Talitha?
It was from Talitha, yeah. Right. So it was just about actual doing of things.
Well, that's always useful to know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like the T-shirt I'm giving away?
Yeah.
It's totally good, isn't it? It's, yeah. So just to remind everybody, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like on, except it doesn't change color when it's on. I just have a different color that I bought. But I think this is really cool. And whoever I joyfully send this to is going to hopefully have a huge picture that they're going to send to me as well, so I can see them with it and celebrate people wearing this. Right. So, Chris, where are we at? Do you have any questions left for me, or do you want me to talk about the book in any different way?
I just want to remind people that the book is free, so as long as you have an Amazon account, you can just go and pick it up immediately. So the link for that is on languagebookclub.com, and it's also in the thread. I'll just post it again because it's not a permanently free book. It's only temporary. So just go and click download. That's
now. Right, yeah.
So you can read it later.
Celebrate Language Book Club. I've decided to make it free, and it is free in every single country. So you can get it on Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, right. Amazon.
So you don't have to read it today, but just go and click buy, which is actually free. So you just click
right.
Get it, and then you can always read it at your convenience. I just did it, so I have it, you know, for you know, the rainy nights, whatever. I'll go check it out. But it really helps. It really helps Kerstin as well for the. You know, the more downloads a book gets, the more Amazon believes it's worth, and so you're helping her as well.
You are going to be helping me, so hopefully we're going to be helping each other. And just on the note of the length of a book, I think this is an interesting one, perhaps for people who are purchasing books, but also people who are writing them. And I found this several times, is that like you sort of get a bit obsessed with word count. And you sort of start looking like, how many pages is this, and what is the word count of this? And when I wrote my book, similar to what Benny was saying, it was nearly twice as long when the original draft was created, or when I made the original draft. It was nearly twice as long, and I edited nearly everything out. I took so much out because I felt like it just doesn't, you know, you try and create a certain level of flow. You try and create a story that you're telling, even if it's an instructional guide, you still kind of want to, that's why I go around the process of acquiring vocabulary, memorizing vocabulary, and then reviewing it. Sorry,
yeah.
I did like randomly end of conversation.
You're so ADHD, you know, you just suddenly, oh, there's a bird. So funny, just instantly changing. But let me get you back on track then. I think the discussion of book lengths is completely useless, and it's very old-fashioned. Because what you have to remember is that we're comparing books that solve very small problems. Like your Vocab Cookbook, for instance, that's a subset of a niche in a hobby about perfecting your vocabulary acquisition. that's not a 400-page book that used to cost $20 at the bookshop. You're selling it for I don't even know what, but it's less
like
than
£5.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the whole world is changing from reading these giant tomes of just all-encompassing, and we're now reading books that solve very specific problems. And this is true in every single niche. For instance, I just read the other day a book about getting up in the morning. I mean, that's about as specific as you can get, right? It's not a book on how to be successful in your entire life, but it's like, if you can't get up in the morning, read this book. If you don't know how to cook pasta, read this book. If you don't know how to get vocabulary, read this book. So, but it is an.
And I really like being very specific in what I was able to provide. And the other aspect is really the longer you make it, the more you, to an extent, overwhelm people.
Right.
I already write a blog and all this stuff. There's already all this Kerstin content that people can, if you want to hear from me, it's not that hard to hear from me on the internet. But this is a book, and there's a specific thing where I'm like, okay, take your Kindle, switch your computer off, and go through it step by step. And it's like what Talitha was saying. You do get overwhelmed, and you do otherwise try and do too much, and you end up doing nothing and feeling bad about yourself.
I think you're doing the readers a disservice by doing it, making it too big. I mean, I was recently reading Tony Robbins' new book on money management, and it was 650 pages in my Kindle reader, and that's not 650 actual pages, but compared to the morning book I read, which was less than 200, you can see that 600 pages is so long, and I prefer just being condensed instead of verbose, I guess, is my point. If you can say it in fewer words, like Benny was talking about with his editor, then why do you need to make more words? It's not about the word count.
Yeah, exactly. I think word count is something that a lot of us carry with us from school exercises, really. And because as I was writing this book, I kept comparing it to my master's thesis, which they tell you how many words you're supposed to put into this master's thesis, and it actually ended up being more, and I felt so accomplished. I was like, I've just written my MA again. I'm so smart. But this is so nonsensical, and I still, as an writer, do, in a way, I struggle with it. I find it difficult. So I'm sure if everybody else is there, it's worth us mentioning it again. Word count's nonsense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just want to apologize for my webcam quality because I have horrible hair, and it's very obvious with HD. So, yeah, here we are. I should find a hat, actually.
Yeah. Well, Chris and I have been, we've been really frazzling ourselves in the run-up to this event, creating the schedule, making sure we promote the language book club. It's been an intense week. It's been.
Here we go.
Beautiful.
I'm ready.
Beautiful. How do I say beautiful in Danish?
Smuk.
Smuk. Oh, like schmuck, the German word for jewelry.
Yeah, not too far off.
Smuk. Ah. You see, this is exactly the question about how do I approach vocabulary. I always look for a word that I already know.
Right. That's
yeah, that's kind of what I do. And in a language where that doesn't work, that's when really the mems and all the vocab unit stuff really comes into play.
Yeah, I don't know how to learn vocabulary still. I've been reading so many different methods and techniques, and I just can't seem to find a way that kind of works for me consistently. Because memorize works. Like, I totally get memorize. It works. But it gets boring if I do a lot of it consistently. If I do, like, let's say, half an hour to an hour every day, I get bored of it quite quickly. But it does work. And if I do I'm not very creative, so I can't do my own. I hate, like, paper flashcards. That's very inefficient. And then you have, like, one person is saying, well, you shouldn't spend so much time making the things, and then another person is like, you should spend as much possible time making them because that will make the memory stronger. Like Gabriel, he's just spends ages on making them.
And I really liked the process you described. I thought that was very good, the how to make a flashcard. But I mean, like I said, for me, it's this. It's just like you do 2 columns, you write one in the one and the other one in the other. But really, that's not the memorizing yet, or that's not the reviewing. So I think the reviewing, what works really well for me, I don't know whether you can do this, is to really impose on a friend, a partner, your mum. Mums love doing this, honestly. If anybody wants to use their parents for language learning, my mother has never denied me vocabulary revision. And it's literally you just give them your notebook. This is why it's good to have a notebook, or even your flashcards, or your iPhone, and you get them to read out the native language content so that they don't have to pronounce the foreign, but they'll still recognize whether what you've got is right. And also, it's really good because they can't give you a hint, because they quite often don't feel confident pronouncing things.
Right.
And you can go, oh, how's it spelled? And then they'll go, oh, it looks like this, kind of thing. So to me, this really, really works. Just get somebody else to quiz you, but do it with a person. Don't do it with a computer, because the computer there isn't. I think there's something to be said, for the additional input of interacting with a person psychologically, and there is that aspect of you trying that little bit harder because you don't want to lose face, which is also why working with a tutor works so well.
Yeah, I definitely think that tutoring is one of the best ways to learn the language. Just consistent tutoring, and like Gabriel says, 650 words. That's a lot to get started with. And the only the difference is that he doesn't like translations, where you just have an image or a representation of the word. But that can be very tricky as well, I find. Like, you can do it with dog and ship and all nouns and stuff, but for particularly verbs or adjectives.
It's the creativity aspect again, and I think
rubbish.
Gabe is mega creative.
If you ever play Pictionary, don't get on my team. Just
Gabe is very creative, whereas I guess I'm very. It's that again. I'm very linguistic. I love looking at the word, and I just, for me, it really. I know people say you shouldn't translate, but it just kind of works for me. So I don't really care. I just noticed that Lindsay asked a question, so I guess I've got another question to ask.
Yeah, go for it.
She said, "What made you decide to write 2 separate books?"
Good question.
Because just in case people you didn't know, I have 2 books. I have the Vocab Cookbook, which is free today, and I can strongly recommend that you download it because it's free. So you got nothing to lose. But I also have written a second book. Oh, actually, that was my first book, called Fluency Made Achievable. And the first book that I wrote was really a project in what is the next thing I could do with my blog? How can I looked at, I tried to adjust each book to a theme, and instead of writing this sort of huge tome, like you said, about, language learning, this is why language learning, this is my worldview of language learning, this is how it all works. And I just, you don't even, when you try to do that, you don't even know where to start, and you become this sort of, it becomes your life's work. And I wasn't really planning to make this my life's work. I just wanted to give people a more in-depth version of the blog posts that I noticed people liked, combined with what I really believe about them. And, so I just wanted to give people a way of taking that away and making it more actionable and more, not just on your computer screen on the internet, but taking it offline. That was kind of the first one. So my first book, the theme was really core language skills and why they have to be, why I don't think that fluency is something that is as achievable when, say, your reading skill is very low and you just speak. I think that affects your confidence. I think it affects your vocabulary levels, and I think you're just missing out on, they're called core language skills because they are also the core skills that you have in your own language. Every language needs to have these. And that was really something that I felt strongly about, and I noticed people just not doing. So I wanted to write about that. The second book was even more rooted in me wanting to address a specific problem. And again, it's like Chris was saying, I just want to write about something very, very specific and give people almost like a walkthrough to everything. But I felt that language is such a big thing. And also I dream of having this kind of series, like a toolkit. Like you don't, ultimately it's going to be one big toolkit. But I'm writing, I guess, the hammer first, and then I'm writing the screwdriver, and the next book that I'm writing might be the scissors.
Very DIY then, I guess.
Very DIY focused, yeah, exactly.
Two tools, but that's okay.
And I do think of them as the Fluent Language toolkit. Really, so that I want people to be able to buy the vocab book and not feel like they have to buy the other book in order to, like they've missed out. Of course, I want people to buy all the books because they're so good, but ultimately, you don't have to because they address different problems.
Right.
So hopefully that answers your question there, Lindsay.
Cool. And we just want to repeat that if you're interested in picking up the free book by Kerstin, you can go to languagebookclub.com. There's a list of the books. And we'd also really appreciate it if you tweeted out the offer to your friends. That would be nice. There's a little click me here button next to the link, and it will send you a tweet from your account. All you have to do is press 2 clicks, and it's sent. So we greatly appreciate if you do that so we can get more people on board the Language Club.
Language Book Club, which has been So have you looked at the Vocab Cookbook, or you've only just got it?
I only just got it. I think you sent me a PDF once, but I haven't had the time to read it actually. So
what do you hope to get out of it?
Inspiration, I guess, on how to. It's not that I don't know how to do vocabulary, but it's always nice to get more input about the sort of how other people do it. Because I think ultimately the way we learn languages as an individual, it's always a composition of all the experiences we've made along the way, and we reach a point where we sort of, all right, I tried this, and this, and what works best for me is this. But you couldn't really arrive at the final, or what you consider the final stop, without reading everyone, listening to everyone, and trying every method. So for me, it's always about inspiration and information. I think information is invaluable. And
the book is certainly written in a way that I hope throughout writing it, I make it very clear that I do not expect my readers to try out every single method in the book. That is not the point. I want people to understand the process, how I see it, of acquire, memorize, revise, and see where they recognize their own activities and whether they align with that kind of process. But beyond that, I try very strongly to not be prescriptive. I don't want people to, pick the Kerstin Hammes method of vocab learning. That's partly why I feature an interview with Olli Antosh, who is an electronic flashcard creator. And in my editing, I had to take out a lot of my own kind of prejudice of electronic flashcards, actually, and I wanted to be a lot more neutral. Because, like I said, I do pen and paper. And I also have the guest chapter from Anthony Mativia. The idea was really to give people a cookbook, to have a lot of recipes in there, and you try out some, and some recipes you come back to, like in a good cookbook, there is that one recipe that you just know never fails, right. And that's what I was hoping to create.
Fantastic. I love those kind of books, by the way. I love the sort of the books that talk about a lot of different things, so you can get a lot out of reading it. I also like specialized books, but I love for inspiration and information. I love I guess you can call it the kitchen sink approach. Just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, right?
Yeah, but not all at once.
No, right, that's a big point, and I'm sure that I will be quite familiar with a lot of the methods anyway, so it's not like it's all going to be new to me. It's those little, I guess it's the 20% that's new that kind of makes 80% of the enjoyment of a book. You know, it's like, the little
Yeah,
light
if
bulb
it's
moment.
instructional, most certainly, because especially if you have sort of, you know, and you're an avid reader of sort of, you've read Benny's book, you've read the Gabriel Weiner book, we've got a few vocab books in the giveaway today, so we know vocab is a problem for people, and that's exactly, I don't want to give a magical method that solves all your problems, but I want to give people the encouragement and the feeling that, okay, I'm just going to try this one out, and if it fails, then that's okay, because I've got another one that I can try out.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Basically, is a good way of underlining it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, if you want to, you know, I'm always encouraging people to blog about languages. So, you know, do start your own language blog. It's great. It's a wonderful experience. We're a nice community. And if you want to write a book and you currently have a blog and you're worried about your book or God knows what, 500 words a day, 1,000 words a day will get you there. So it's a case of consistency and just really focusing on it. It is really exhausting. It is really worrying, and if I can make one software recommendation, which I'll post in the Facebook group as well, get yourself Scrivener, because it's awesome.
I've been using that. I love it. The only problem I have is it doesn't do syncing well across different computers. But if you have the same computer and you use that for writing, it's totally fine. If you want to use it on multiple computers, like if you want to have a laptop and a desktop or multiple laptops, use Dropbox for saving the Scrivener on, because Google Drive doesn't really like it too much. I had some trouble, and I actually lost quite a bit of writing, which sucked. But
oh no, yeah, it does a special thing. I mean, what I've got is I've got a laptop, so I've got a laptop, and I actually, if you see that calendar there, underneath there is a beanbag, and that's my kind of writing corner. So if I have to, you know, get away from the desk, that's where I kind of go, and I've got my little corner, and that really helps. So it's the same as with language learning. You know, create your zone. You know, go to certain places. I've got specific writing cafes that I go to that I kind of, you know.
Yeah,
I have an email cafe and a writing cafe in Lancaster.
There's a cafe called the Writers Cafe?
No, that's the cafe I go to when I want to write and create, and then I have another cafe that I want to go to when I want to do emails and be admin Kerstin.
I wish I had cafes. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's all you need is Wi-Fi.
Too far away.
Definitely. Right. I'm gonna log off, I think, and make space for our next guest, who's coming on in 10 minutes.
I think maybe you wanna. Do you wanna go
next? Oh, Ollie.
Do you want to go through the program just to give people a sense of what's coming up for today?
I would love to do that. That's such a good idea. So we are currently at 11:51 GMT. Yes, Abigail, I have a cat. Just in case anybody didn't know this from my French course where the cat walks around on Udemy, or my podcasts where the cat meows, I have a cat. I love her very much, and she loves attention. Okay, the cat is not on the schedule today. However, it is currently 11:52 GMT, and in 8 minutes we are welcoming Ollie Richards from iwillteachyoualanguage.com. An hour after that, we're going language specific with Benjamin Hui, which we still can't pronounce, neither you nor me.
We'll ask him.
Yeah, we'll ask him. He's from French Together. Both Ollie and Benjamin are unable to join us on a live chat, so you guys have to get your typing fingers ready and just ask the questions on Facebook. But they're both going to be on Facebook for an hour, you know, participating in giveaways, etc. At 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock GMT, we've got Jared from Speaking Latino. I'm going to be interviewing him about his career, discovering and sharing the joys of regional Spanish. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
Yeah, very interesting. I think you can dig deep there with just some of the languages that are very rare, and also they have quite an impressive repertoire of books. So I'm sure he has a lot of stuff to share.
and I mean, when I learned Spanish, I learned Castellano, which is, you know, Castilian, European Spanish. So, but I also had a Venezuelan teacher, and it'll be really interesting to, you know, talk about the differences there.
Yes.
At 3 o'clock, you're taking over and interviewing Anthony Metivier, our memory champion.
Yep.
At 4 o'clock, you're talking to Natasha and Anna from Russian Step by Step. They're joining us from San Francisco, and they create textbooks. So I've got one here I can show people.
We're so professional.
This is Russian Step by Step. And they've got a really awesome deal on the total workbook, total beginner workbook. So it's Ruski Yasik. At 5 o'clock GMT, Chris is going live and answering your questions about language podcasting, book writing, inspiration, and whatever people want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
And after that, I'm going to talk to a mother of 5 multilingual children. Becky Morales from Kid World Citizen is going to be with us. Our mystery guest, do you want to announce who the mystery guest is?
No, I think you should do it because I actually didn't know it this morning, so I just did it out of... Who is it actually? Can you just tell me because I'm not sure?
It's Gabriel Weiner, the author of Fluent Forever.
Okay, that's literally the worst secret in the world because you already announced it several places and it's on the book list as well. But,
yeah, I know. He just hadn't confirmed the time. That's how he became the mystery guest.
No, I appreciate the enthusiasm and the excitement. I was just very confused. Like, we have a mystery guest?
We have we have Gabriel Weiner. No, I just really wanted to get the schedule out to people, but didn't want to put Gabe's name on it in case he can't make it. So he became the mystery guest.
You're so smart.
It's just creative admin, really. And at 8 o'clock. I think I'm taking that one over. I'm talking to Aidan O'Rourke, who's actually a fellow Northern English lad from Altrincham, I think, in Cheshire, which is just around the corner from me. It's not very far away. He's a German and English teacher, but he's also written a novel which is currently available for free to anyone who wants to review it on Wattpad, and that is called Stargirl Off the Edge. And the novel is a coming-of-age, sort of young adult book aimed at both English and Chinese learners. So I'm really fascinated by that. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
And that's our schedule. So you can also access the schedule. I've currently got it on my blog at fluentlanguage.co.uk/blog. It's also on the event page right at the top, so you can just see. If you want to double check who's on at which time, that's where you can see. And also go to languagebookclub.com/books to get your discounts on all the different books. Make sure you've got a free Vocab Cookbook in your pocket. Make sure you review it. Get in touch. I will send you the worksheets because they are, taking action is hard, so I've tried to make it a bit easier, and I'm going to give you one of these beautiful T-shirts to one of you.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's take a break from the live stream and get onto the typing on Facebook, and we'll have Ollie Richards' post going up in a few minutes' time. So get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, depending on where in the world you are, and we'll see you in a few minutes on the Facebook page. So
awesome! Right, see you in a minute, Chris.
See ya.